he has been there now since Urban Meyer arrived way back in 2012. And he's developed kind of his own cottage industry, I guess, as a recruiting coordinator. He was a committee of one or two way back when he started this. And now he has his own staff of people that he supervises as they coordinate recruiting. And Ohio State's gotten several high-profile verbal commitments here in recent weeks, including the outstanding running back here recently, Travion Henderson, I believe is his name, from Virginia. Tremendous prospect. And Pantoni was asked during the conference call today how Ohio State has been able to maintain this type of a momentum with the recruiting class that they are signing. They have the number one class right now on paper here on April the 3rd, but obviously that class will not put pen to paper for another 8.5 months. It'll be mid-December when the 2021 class will be signed. So long way to go until this cycle comes to an end. And obviously, Ohio State off to a great start. And Pantoni had a lot to say today, and I'm sure our other panelists will share some of their thoughts. But just the organization that it takes with most public buildings closed at this point, everybody, including the head coach, Ryan Day, is operating from his home at this point. And so it takes a lot of logistics and a lot of technology to put in the hands of the assistant coaches to continue recruiting the top prospects during this period when we're all on somewhat of a hiatus, obviously, with reside in place orders and everything else that's going on because of the coronavirus. But very telling stuff today, I thought, from Mark Pantoni, the recruiting coordinator.
I had the chance to ask Mark about this 2021 class and the fact that Ohio State was able to get 2020 put in the barn pretty quick. They only had one player who signed in the late period, so they had everybody else, 24 of the 25 members, signed in the December signing period. And he did say that it really allowed them to turn the page and focus on 2021 and get things really going there, even though you really do start September 1 of their junior season in terms of the contact when the NC2A rules allow that. But, it even goes earlier than that in terms of going out to the schools and watching practices and things along those times during the evaluation period. And then I also asked him a little bit about, does this kind of put you behind in 2022? Because even though you guys are sitting with 15 at this point, it's still a long way until signing day. You're losing the April evaluation period. There's a very real chance you're going to lose your camps and not be able to have guys come in there. I mean, when we talk about camp offers, Darren Lee was a camp offer. Terry McLaurin was a camp offer. Guys that maybe haven't checked off all the boxes yet. And he did talk about guys not checking off the boxes, but really the focus is on 2021 right now and trying to figure out what's going on there. And then something else I kind of took away too is a lot of people are starting to talk about it. Should there be a change to the recruiting calendar? Should we maybe do away with the December signing period this year just because we're losing so much of the time? And he didn't really seem on board with it today. But, those types of discussions will have to be had later once we really know what's going on.
One of the things that interested me was what Kevin was asking Mark Pantoni about was, you don't have these evaluation periods. And Pantoni said, yeah, they have boxes, figurative boxes rather of, what players can do. And now they don't have the opportunity to. He said there are players out there that they just needed one more box to check, and now they can't because they don't have that spring evaluation. So they're going to have to do what the NFL is going to have to do, and that's base pretty much everything off of film. And, sure, Ohio State has seen some of these guys in person or in past camps last year, but now they're going to have to base a lot more on film. And then one of the funny stories that Pantoni told is, now with the coaches having less to do, they are evaluating 2022 kids. And Kerry Combs, the defensive coordinator and quarterbacks coach, told Pantoni earlier this week, these guys aren't very good. And Mark had to remind him, well, you're looking at high school sophomores. You're looking at 15-year-olds. You can't project that. You can't evaluate them as if they were high school seniors or juniors. You've got to find things that you like about them and go from there. So it's probably a pretty interesting and new learning process for the coaches, or they're having to relearn stuff that they used to have to do way back when, because it's a lot of it is Pantoni and his staff bringing the early kids in, the 2022 kids, and saying, hey, look at these guys. And now the coaches, as Ryan Day said, they're doing a lot more evaluations now. And they're seeing, I guess, not a lower class of players, but they're just seeing more of the younger guys. And they're having to kind of resettle what they look at, how they view things, and how to project where they'll be in, 2 years, 3 years as a high school freshman from what they're looking at right now with the 2022 guys.
That's what I find interesting in the process in general, not pertaining to this particular situation, but just year to year to year in evaluating and having to make commitments to a certain extent as a program to a player, as the player does to the program before the senior season. And then I would love to be in those conversations, amongst those conversations regarding the high risers in the senior season, the guys that take off versus the guys that disappoint, and that they had highly ranked that they back off of, and how they massage that in regards to the pressure put on or the easing off, and how they figure out the numbers and the whole dynamic.
That's a valid point. And I've been tracking this for over 20 years. And I go back to the 90s when it was almost unheard of for guys to get offered before the start of their senior year, maybe in August of their senior year or September. Some offers would start coming out as guys are starting to back up what they'd done as sophomores and juniors in the beginning of their senior years, when things would really heat up. I think in 1994, I think their first commitment came around the time of the Michigan game for the 95 class. And then a year later, they took a guy, David Mitchell, who was a defensive back from Westerville, at their summer camp for the following February, like 9 months out. And that was 25 years ago, kind of how it was done. Well, it's so accelerated now. And part of that is the ability to get underclassmen into your camp, onto your campus for visits previously, and to get those kids in for games. I was looking through some of the photos our photographer shot at some of the games, and I've thought about going back and cataloging, which underclassmen were at those games and those kind of things, just as a reference point of some of the younger guys that they'd already, had in for games, because they can't have anybody on campus right now for spring practice, which was always a popular thing. When high school kids were maybe on a spring break, they'd pop in during that week for a spring practice or a Saturday practice or the spring game in April. We're always, which would be coming up a week and a half from now, or I guess next Saturday would be when it was supposed to be. Those were always popular times to have a handful or a dozen or 25 key prospects come in for visits, and none of that's going on right now. So they're kind of living off past connections with these guys. The coaches are FaceTiming, Zooming, however you want to correspond with prospects. And the good thing is everybody's got a lot of downtime right now. I know my kids are going to class online, but otherwise a lot of downtime to spend talking to college coaches, I assume, for some of these kids. So maybe some relationships are being built remotely, I guess, at this point. But it is an interesting time, and I agree with Kevin. It's going to be interesting to see how the NCAA and college coaches respond when given the all clear by our government that you can visit campuses again and coaches can go back out on the road, or however that's going to look. It's going to be a real interesting time to see how people play catch up.
Yeah, talking about just how it's accelerated. I remember when I started with Rivals in the mid 2000s, the aughts, if you will, and that first spot was always kind of a big deal under Jim Tressel. Who's going to be the first junior to jump in? I remember, it was like a Beanie Wells type guy or whatever would commit like the day after the February signing day and would be that first commit. And now, at least at this point, Ohio State doesn't have any 2022 commits. We see a lot of schools that have already gone that far ahead. I mean, I don't think Ohio State is probably that far away from getting, really to that point or whatnot. But, with that being said, we certainly have seen quite an acceleration, and that kind of moved with the early signing period and where you are with all of that. And there's going to have to be a point, I think, where the NC2A is going to have to come in, and Mark Pantoni touched upon this a little bit, come in and maybe slow the process down. You got these vanity offers going out to junior high school kids and whatnot. I mean, even Tate Martell was offered that early at that point, and those certainly are not committable offers at that point for real. I mean, yeah, you can commit at that point, but just kind of a wait and see. So I think they're going to have to figure something out. But I mean, yeah, it does pay to work ahead.
Well, I go back to Urban years ago was lamenting how fast and how quickly recruiting was moving because they wouldn't be able to evaluate Ohio high school seniors. They wouldn't be able to see their senior year because these guys would want the offers before their senior year. Like Mitch Trubisky was, I'm not going to come to an Ohio State camp. I shouldn't have to. You should offer me now based on my junior season. And so this is also a state without spring football. So it's known for being plenty of late blooming, and to not be able to really get those guys. And now they're being forced to decide, do I sign early or do I wait and see if Ohio State will come calling between January and February and in like the 6 weeks between the signing days. And then Kevin was talking about the early offers. I was talking to Julian Fleming's high school coach this week. Julian Fleming's the #1 player in the 2020 class per ESPN wide receiver. And he told me Fleming was getting offers as a true freshman. And fortunately for the coach and the player, like he never changed. Julian Fleming never changed his demeanor or got a big head. And he's like, it's not like that with every kid. Sometimes they start getting these early offers and they think they've made it. And then those offers go away because they're not working as hard. And it becomes this detrimental side effect of getting the attention early on. And I remember the first early signing period at Ohio State, Urban was complaining, and then he held up the list of guys who signed. He's like, but I guess I really can't complain because look what we have. And so you make the best of it. You do it. Ryan Day is doing the same thing. Everybody's signing pretty much in that early period, which has allowed them then to get ahead on the 2021 kids, which is something else Mark Pantoni said today.